Seattle used to be one of the most beautiful and livable cities in the world, but it has devolved into a socialist hellhole besieged by violence and economic immobility. The do-gooder authoritarians on Seattle City Council want the once robust Emerald City to swirl down the collective commode by enacting punishing minimum wage laws, a gun tax, and now a new tax on the wealthy that may not even be legal. The minimum wage law, which will jack up the forced hourly pay to $15, has punished Seattle's poorest citizens who now work fewer hours and take home less money, according to an ideologically diverse study from the University of Washington. They're not even at the full 15 yet. The Seattle gun tax is supposed to punish Second Amendment adherence by slapping an arbitrary $25 fee on every gun purchase, but instead that has not only led to more layoffs in gun stores, but increased gun violence, with shootings skyrocketing by 37% as people find black market weapons and legal ones outside the city. Good job, commies. The emotionalists never understand unintended consequences. That's why the red geniuses on the city council unanimously approved a 2.25% income tax on the wealthy, which will ensure Seattle's wealthiest business-owning, property tax-paying citizens move to Bellevue, where Bill Gates lives, because the world's richest man is not dumb enough to live in the state's most poorly run city. Washington state not only has no income tax, by law, cities and counties there can't impose one willy-nilly. It's just another example of how progressive laboratories halt progress by inviting the rich to leave, encouraging crime, and hurting the poor they so disingenuously claim to help. Save yourself the airfare for that trip to Caracas. Just head to Seattle instead, where freedom died along with every good singer from the 90s. Welcome to the show. I'm Kennedy. So, should Seattle rename itself North Havana? Let's take it to my post-apocalyptic man panel tonight. It's Reason Magazine editor-at-large Matt Welch. And no stranger to freedom, he's joined by Anthony Fisher, a columnist at the Daily Beast and The Week. And Evan Siegfried is here, a Republican strategist and author of GOP GPS. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, thank you.
Lot to dive into. I lived in Seattle. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I love this part of the country. It's very sad to see great cities run into the ground with bad policies.
Their mayor was defending recently a new huge soda tax there, 8 times as much as the beer tax locally, because it was a way to combat white privilege. And I swear to God, I'm not making that up. That is how bad things have gotten there. They give paid time off to city employees to go be part of the resistance and march against Donald Trump. Yeah. Like, go ahead and do it. March all you want, but not as paid time off. It's remarkable.
Yeah, not as public employees.
Not as a public employee.
Okay, now let me ask you this, because we've seen this in other cities, especially in California. Does this have anything to do with powerful labor unions in Washington state and specifically in Seattle?
Well, sure. I mean, the entire West Coast of the United States, the labor unions are the biggest single force by a factor of a whole lot. There aren't any Republicans, generally speaking, left of the center of all 3 of those states, and so they're run by labor unions. But it's also just an accurate reflection of where Democrats are right now. They want to do the same thing, a lot of the same things here in New York City. They want to do a lot of the same things in Los Angeles. It's more an aesthetic response to adopting every single idea that has been shown to have failed elsewhere, including millionaires' taxes, which they tried that in Maryland, right? People move. That's what rich people do.
Well, exactly.
They can afford to.
It's one thing when we talk about tax policy in this country and lowering the corporate tax, because people say, no businesses are going to leave the United States. Where are they going to go? But they will leave a big city, won't they?
Yeah, why wouldn't they? I mean, and this is a case, especially in Seattle, but it happens in a number of states where there's one big, bright blue city surrounded by a sea of red.
Yeah.
And the big blue city has all the political capital. But there's a law in Washington state saying you cannot do this. You cannot impose this income tax. And I think that if they wanted to take that to the courts, I have no idea how it would go. But if they wanted to put it to a referendum, I bet you they'd lose.
Yeah. And you think that this is ultimately the goal of these leftists, to repeal the income tax law and the fact that there is no income tax in Washington state?
This is a political game. They've been trying to repeal this income tax law for since it was incorporated in 1984. And what they're trying to do is say, look, we're champions and we're going to go and fight it in court. Okay, we're going to end up losing in court, which is going to happen very quickly. So we're going to go and fight it at the ballot box. And they want to be champions. And when they say they're just imposing a tax on the wealthy, remember, the city council was presented with a bill that it was 2% tax increase. They increased it to 2.25%. And they also, the Seattle's mayor said that this is a way to increase taxes on the wealthy to help the lowest economically in Seattle.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they're only going to rejiggle the taxes for the middle class.
I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. They'll raise taxes. They might be successful. This might be legal for a year. They'll take that revenue and they will promise that for the next year and keep spending it, even though they won't have the revenue coming in because rich people are going to leave, and now lower income citizens will be shouldering that burden. Now, meantime, in the other Washington, D.C., Republicans are still up to their necks in health care problemas. And now the GOP's top two senators, Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn, have each said that a revised bill will be out within days, and they want to vote on it next week. But here's the rub. Analysts say the new bill will likely be further to the right than the last version, which will only further alienate moderates who are looking to protect Medicaid in their states. In other words, as Senator John McCain said Sunday, this thing looks pretty dead again. And this afternoon, Senator McConnell said that he's delaying the August recess so they can get things done. Is there any way to avoid another catastrophe? I don't see this thing passing, Matt. I know there are people like Mike Lee and on this issue, Ted Cruz, who are fighting the good fight and trying to de-socialize this bill, particularly with their amendments. What do you think will happen?
Right, and Donald Trump is actually supporting them right now in that that's heading to the showdown. It's when the Cruz-Lee amendment gets up against Susan Collins and the moderates. And the Congressional Budget Office right now is scoring, or in the process of scoring that to see what it's going to look like. Mike Lee told me yesterday there's no way that he would vote for any bill that doesn't include the Cruz-Lee amendments. If Cruz and Lee are out, that's it. It's done. So if they decide in that bill to write those things, it'll be up to the moderates to see what they're going to do. But everything that I've seen from Susan Collins on down say that they're not going to like that. So that is finally going to be the moment when someone's going to look at Donald Trump and say, you don't get to have your bill. And who's going to have the courage to weather that?
You know, and the Cruz-Lee amendment doesn't really tackle the Medicaid expansion. I mean, it doesn't really touch that. So you can give people more choice and flexibility in the insurance that they get, and you would have fewer uninsured people. It solves a lot lot. Do you think it could be enough?
It could be. I mean, the Cruz plan actually is a plan.
Is it too much that it does thwart moderates? Is it something that's so off-putting?
You know, it would. I guess each one of these moderates is going to have to, triangulate in their own way and figure out how much of this is going to alienate their base for re-election. But at least the Cruz-Lee plan is a plan, whereas the McConnell keeps kind of pushing a slightly warmed over version of the same thing every few weeks without any kind of public airing of it. The CBO scores come out, but it's still a mystery to everybody. And I think trying to cram this through right before the recess is probably going to fail again.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll end up taking a recess if healthcare fails. You say they can still move on to tax reform if it fails. Do you believe that?
I think that Mitch McConnell never wanted to do Obamacare repeal and replace first. I think they wanted to do tax reform,
get an
easy win on the board. And when you have opposition from the left, it's just, you're going to be usurping your corporate overlords, as opposed to healthcare where it's this palpable thing. And we're not going to get a vote this week because that's why they extended did away with the August recess, essentially. They want to get this done, or at least say they tried, and then move on. Tax reform is much easier to do. Infrastructure is much easier to do. Healthcare, this bill is toxic. Nobody in America likes it, save one or two people, and they all live in Washington.
Yeah, those people are Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn, and they only like it because they have to, because they're paid to like it, which is so inauthentic and yucky. All right, the panel's going to return a little bit later. All right, the IRS is not an organized crime family, but you could have fooled an elderly Dallas couple whose bridal shop was shut down in a way that would make Tony Soprano proud. The couple reportedly owed $31,000 in back taxes, but rather than putting them on a payment plan, the IRS declared 1,600 of their dresses as perishable items, even though they were never worn by Lady Gaga, and sold them for $17,000. The sale not only failed to recoup the full tax debt, but it put the bridal shop out of business completely. And if that weren't bad enough, a lawsuit filed by the couple states that members of the IRS even bought some of the dresses at a discounted rate. Because, hey, man, cheap dresses. Most loan sharks couldn't pull this off. So how is the IRS able to do that? Matt Welch, please explain.
We have this a series of terrible rules in this country, civil asset forfeiture being one of the worst, where the government, the federal government in particular, can take your stuff even though you did not commit a crime. The stuff they declare is illegal. In this case, they declared the stuff illegal because they had made 3 different structuring payments. This is total Orwellian language for meaning they had passed a bill, Congress a long time ago, saying if you have $10,000 that you deposit, then that has to be reported in a certain way. And so if they notice you making 3 different deposits, that's maybe $9,000, they say, aha, that's structuring.
Yeah.
That means you're following the law, actually. But they decided to make that illegal,
That's the
too.
law.
That's the law.
That's the line. But they're saying that's a crime.
That
which
is a crime.
Absolutely insane. And that was supposed to protect people from drug dealers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this elderly couple, they weren't drug dealers. They were selling wedding dresses, which, again, you know, the cost of a nice wedding can be very addictive, but it's a little harsh.
They used to say ignorance of the law is no defense. Now they're saying knowledge of the law is no defense.
Yeah.
You know, so the fact that they're knowingly complying with the law, that's what got them into trouble. And even more despicably, and perhaps ironically, the IRS bent its own rules to devalue the actual value of the dresses so that they could sell them instead of holding on to them.
Yeah.
There was a certain threshold they had to meet.
They said they were perishable.
Yeah.
Wedding
dresses that they bought.
Yeah, they don't wilt.
Yeah.
They don't go bad.
Yes.
They're not jars of mayonnaise. I mean, this is the most irrational thuggery. It is absolutely insane. And no due process.
Some women might actually have a use-by date on their own wedding dresses that they bought before they found the fiancé, but that is not cause for perishable. It did violate due process.
I don't know anyone who's bought a wedding dress before they get married.
I've met 1 or 2.
I bet you have. You're a weirdo.
They violated due process.
Yeah.
They said you didn't pay, you owed money for taxes on years 2005, 8, and several other years. And they didn't even allow them to appeal the ruling, and they just went out and seized it. In 20 minutes, they took the entire business and they ruined this couple's lives. On top of that, it seems the IRS had take your kids to work day because the 20 armed agents who came and seized everything brought kids, put them on crates, and ordered them pizza. So these kids are watching on crates, eating pizza as their parents ruin these people's lives.
Yeah.
In the federal court lawsuit filed by this couple, it actually says that they did not owe any income taxes because they operated at net losses, which are not taxable.
Yeah,
so
they were able to
really
write off those losses against what they had earned, but that was not recognized, and maybe they have to go back and redo some of their taxes. Maybe they didn't do something right, but that's not how things should be run in this country. A business shouldn't be run into the ground without due process. Gentlemen, thank you all so much for being here. The light of liberty shines so brightly on this table, I might have to come back in sunglasses.